meeting is being recorded and summarized.
All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Renee Angela Mock. I am here today to present to you our training for the evening hosted by Mentor Maryland, DC, and the Y in Central Maryland. And tonight our topic is Becoming a Better Mentor, Honoring Youth Voice, and Building Power. Like I said, I'm Renee Angela Mock. I'm a certified HR practitioner. I am a master trainer of mentoring practices, and I'm excited to bring this topic to you. It is one of my favorites. So if you haven't gotten familiar with your screen yet, just quickly, and we'll do this again in a little bit, but bottom right is the chat. So you can press that button and the chat will pop up. You can send emojis in there, GIFs. You can react with an emoji, raise your hand, and we have closed captioning in the left-hand corner if you need it. But like I said, I'm from Mentor Maryland, DC, and we are your local affiliate of the National Mentoring Partnership. So the National Mentoring Partnership and all of its affiliates, there's about 24 affiliates across the US. So our goal is to uplift the urgency and march toward quality mentoring and ensuring that there are enough mentors and caring adults for young people. So closing what we call the mentoring gap. So we've been in Maryland since 2018 and expanded to DC in 2021. And we are essentially your local experts in mentoring. And we are happy to be here for you and to be able to share everything that we have to offer and the National Mentoring Partnership has to offer. And that looks like a few different things. So one, I want to tell you now, you're going to get these slides, and there's lots of clickable links on all of the slides, but you'll get all of these resources. Like I said before, we are the affiliate of the National Mentoring Partnership. So we are the connector between you and them. So the National Mentoring Partnership has a research arm that does tons of research in the area of mentoring. And when you hear me refer to research and evidence today, it is because of them that we have it. They also host the National Mentoring Summit, which happens every January. So if you were there, hi, hope we saw each other. And they also host collaborative mentoring webinar series, which I encourage you to join to connect with programs from across the US. We usually highlight them in our newsletter and social media. But yeah, tons of opportunities and great connections with them. And we're happy to be kind of your in-between and make sure you get everything that they have to offer as well. We offer no-cost technical assistance to the National Mentoring Resource Center. So if you are a staff or a leader of a mentoring program and your program needs capacity building in a certain area like recruitment, training, screening, program development, program evaluation, you can apply for technical assistance through the National Mentoring Resource Center. And we take on requests that are in our region here in Maryland and DC. So that is, again, no cost. If you are serving young people 18 and under, it is no cost. So yes, I encourage you to apply and to get in there. We also manage the regional database for that National Mentoring Connector. So the Mentoring Connector is a national database of mentoring programs and mentoring opportunities. So prospective mentors can go to the Mentoring Connector and search for mentoring opportunities in their area that you can put in and advertise. And young people can go there as well if they're looking to get a mentor. So if you're not in the Mentoring Connector, I encourage you to get in there. And then of course we host trainings like this. We have regional roundtables. Some of you may have been at the roundtable in DC yesterday, so we want to connect on a local level. We know that Maryland and DC are very diverse across the region and the needs are different, so we aim to kind of connect with you in your region on a quarterly basis. So if you haven't come to one yet, please join us. And the basis of all of our work is the Element of Effective Practice for Mentoring. We recently released the 5th edition, which is very exciting. So we are aiming to get everything about that resource, an evidence-based research-backed resource to you all, as it's for mentoring programs to ensure they have the highest quality program and the most likely outcomes for positive, long-lasting mentoring relationships, which is really cool. I'll stop there so we can keep it moving. But again, these are all links and you can reach out to us anytime because our goal at Mentor Maryland DC is to be here for you. So some virtual logistics. I appreciate you being in here in WebEx with us today. We know that most folks are used to Zoom, but WebEx works best for us and it looks slightly different. So on the bottom of your screen, you should see your mute, your stop video, again, the hand to raise your hand and an emoji reaction. So feel free to play around with those. You'll then see to the right of that, a button for apps, which you shouldn't necessarily need to touch. participants, if you see somebody here that you want to send a direct message to, and then the chat. So again, we want to keep the chat lively as well. Another way to engage besides, just coming off of mute. Your chat should look like this. Like I said before, you can send emojis in there. You can send a GIF, which not all chats can do, which is cool. And you can tag someone if you're having a conversation with someone. So that is fun. And then we are going to be using something called Slido today. So I'm going to put this link in the chat now so you can open it in your browser. And I'm actually going to slide over here. So when you go to slido.com, you're going to enter the code VOICE to get into today's session. And then once you're here, you'll see this, you'll put in your name and you can join the Slido. So we're going to start using Slido in just a few slides. It's interactive. It's for us to do things like polls and word clouds and collect answers. So you'll be cued when to join, but I encourage you to get that open now. It's integrated into WebEx as well, so you might not need your tab, but just to be safe, you can open that now. Today's code is VOICE, and again, you'll see that here. Lastly, we'll be using breakout rooms. We will be using breakout rooms. When we do, this little will pop up and say that it has started, and you'll need to press join now to get into your room. So just be mindful of that. When we close rooms, we always have 60 seconds. You'll get a pop up. You can wrap up your conversation, and then we will come back together. So that's a little bit about that. Again, play around. See where you're comfortable, and we want to make sure again that you have everything you need to interact and engage in the conversation today. I'm not going to spend too much time on our community standards. I'll leave them here. This is something that we've gone over many times, but again, this is a learning environment of which we hope that you will be challenged, you will expand your understanding of this topic, because of course this isn't necessarily a topic we think you know nothing about, right? We know you're youth practitioners, we know that you are mentors, we know that you have experience, but we hope that you remain open and listen openly as well, and never be afraid to ask questions. Please do. That's why we are here. And then we also ask that while you are in the call today, that you be as engaged as possible, and no matter your role here, to be a host, right? We're going to a breakout room. It's like we're in a room with folks, and I don't like to be a stickler about cameras on or anything like that, as long as you are engaged, because that also helps me know where we are in our learning, and also it makes our conversation and our learning richer to hear from each other. So I will be asking you questions, calling on folks, asking you to share stories and things like that. And I will do that as well, right? I'm going to model that for you. We'll have polls and slides for you to interact with. And that is a way just for us to really be engaged in this learning and topic together, which is important for us to get the most out of it. So today's session is part of the Healing Centered Arts cohort. If you are not part of this cohort and want to be part of this cohort, you still can. You can register at this link. And this session is one part, it's a 5-session cohort, so this session is one part of it. And again, that's focusing on healing centered arts, and that's really in partnership with the Y. They're the real hosts of the cohort. But otherwise, if you're just here for today's session, you will be earning this Credly badge on the right. So Credly is a digital credentialing system. It is essentially your proof, your certificate that you were here and that you were actively engaging. So to earn your Credly badge today, we expect you to stay on for the duration of the session, to be engaged in the training verbally, in the chat, in our slides and things like that. And then if you reach all those requirements, you'll be issued a Credly badge within a week. And again, if you don't know about this cohort and you want to join, this session will count, and you can just follow with me via email to get you set up to be part of the cohort. Folks in, okay. So I like to share just a little bit about myself, and I'll let you read that. And I do that because as a facilitator, I want to make it clear that while we aim to be as unbiased as possible, everybody comes with their own experiences, and I expect the same of you as well, right? So no matter how unbiased I try to be, this is the experience that informs me. It has to do with my literal experience. It has to do with my identities, right? My identities give me a personal lens of how I view the world and my experiences. So I want to inform you, right, about what some of that may be when you're wondering why I might say something or where did that come from and things like that. I want you to know a little bit about me so you can get that perspective as well. And consider that too, right? Like when you are challenging some of your ideas, consider what is my own personal lens that I'm bringing to a conversation. And again, these lenses aren't, while I'm saying it can make me a little bit more biased in certain ways, what it also does when we collaborate is to give us all more perspective because we get to learn about each other's perspectives and experiences. So when you do go into breakout rooms and things like that, please feel free to share. And that's why I ask you to introduce yourselves in the chat, right? Where are you from? What organization? Where in the state? Because we're all bringing something different to the table, different and valuable. So the topic we are talking about today is from the Becoming a Better Mentor resource. So I'm dropping the link in the chat. This is a research-backed, evidence-based resource from the National Mentoring Partnership. I mentioned them before. We love them. They're our partner. They are our host. But the Becoming a Better Mentor resource was the first kind of resource that they created that was specifically and directly towards mentors. Usually our research and things like that have been for mentoring practitioners or for programs, but this is speaking directly to the folks who interact with youth. Mentors, teachers, can be useful for parents, can be useful for youth practitioner staff as it relates to their relationships with young people. So this resource is amazing. It has 12 chapters. We're just reviewing one chapter tonight. And it is available in English, in Spanish. It is on audiobook as well. There are short summary videos you can engage in as well. So I encourage you to check that out. We have done trainings on a lot of the Becoming a Better Mentor chapters. So if you go to our YouTube, you may be able to see recordings of other trainings we've done on other topics, which is cool. So I'll also talk a little bit later about, pardon me, which ones are kind of related and what might be useful for you to kind of expand on and continue your learning. Give me one more second. Okay. Oh, my dog is not happy that I'm in here. Okay. So we're starting our first Slido, so you can go to slido.com again and enter voice, but you may also see it on the side of your screen. So our first question that I want to talk about is thinking back to when you were a young person, when you were growing up, any age throughout your childhood. Think back to that. Do you remember any adult who treated you like a regular person and not just a kid? So as you vote in this poll, our smiley is like, absolutely, lots of memories of this, definitely happened. Our middle kind of smiley, which is like kind of, a little bit, somewhat, and then our frowny face is a big no. So I'm going to give you time to answer this poll so we can see how it spreads across the group. I'm going to close my door real quick so we can't hear my dog. Taking a look at a few more folks in there. So we have about 2/3 of us. Again, when you were a young person, do you remember any adult who treated you like a regular person and not just a kid? You can keep voting. This will be live. This is what we have. And this is interesting because it's different every time I do this. So I love to see what the spread is like. So on a scale of 1 to 3, we're about 2.3. So we're a little bit more favorable right now. We do have those memories, which is great because we're going to call on those memories and talk a little bit more about what that was like and how we can do it and to model as well, right? So we are mostly in the positive, which I think is great. We have some maybes in here, which again, probably at the end of today, you'll kind of have new clarity about those kind of maybe experiences, right? And what could have gone better and what could have been different. We have about 15% of which I'm sorry to hear that you didn't have this as a young person. Of course, in our roles now, oh, even more folks. That, of course, in our roles now, where our goal is, right, for our young people to be over here. So again, we're going to talk today about how to do that. So I want to now for us to think about those adults who were treating you like a regular person. What did they do that was different from most other adults? So what actions did they take to treat you like not just a kid? What were they doing? Describe an action. You can describe a memory. What did they do that made you feel not just like a kid? So it gave me the opportunity to explain. Ooh, that is so good. Don't we cut off kids all the time when they're trying to explain something? Like that was a big memory for me being cut off. They listened to my opinions. Yes, valuing these opinions. They asked me questions about why and what I was thinking, and they listened. Right, that actually listening part, right? We don't just ask just to ask, but we're following up and we're kind of proving that we really listened. Listened with real appreciation and non-patronizing responses, key, right? Real communication. They listened to me, created a space I felt safe in, and made space for me to share. So Tara's kind of describing a lot of a real mutuality, right? Really reciprocal. They listened when I had a great concern, so we're taking the concerns of young people seriously, right? I wasn't treated differently until I was a bit older, and they asked questions instead of just assumed. Yeah, kind of hearing that over and over again, right? Adults are making space to hear a young person out rather than make assumptions. And it's easy to make assumptions because that's how we kind of keep it moving, all right? Our brain is trying to put things together when we're in situations that we don't really know or understand. And especially when we think about the adult to young person dynamic, we have lots of experiences to put together to make assumptions, right? We have lots of information from our more years on earth than our young people, right? That we're putting things together and maybe making assumptions. But as you guys have identified here, a lot of these folks were doing more listening, maybe more listening than talking, and they're making space for your opinion. So lastly, we're going to do a little word cloud here, which is in a word, in one word. How did it make you feel? Those adults were doing that for you when they were treating you not just like a kid. How did it make you feel? Valued? And our value is getting bigger, so we know more people are saying, right? If you're not in the poll, you can go to the slide up. Respected? Again, the bigger it is, the more folks are voting for it. Open, heard, loved. Yeah, heard. Yes, just being heard out, right? You have something to share. Anybody else? Any last contributions? Respected, heard, valued, love, some more love, open. I'll wait for this last person to see type. Understood, right? And being heard and understood. There are all the things kind of build on each other, right? We'll talk about respect being foundational, and it kind of builds to I'm not just hearing you, but I understand. And that's kind of the difference when we talk about honoring youth voice and building empathy and things like that. Yes, heard is only getting bigger and bigger. I love that. Okay, we are going to move forward. Thank you for participating. We will do some more of those. I'm going to keep a question and answer open for anybody to have questions. You can put those in there, but we are going to keep moving forward. So like I said, this is our chapter that we're focusing on. It is chapter 8. Oh, I don't know what to say, 11. It was written by Elizabeth Santiago, who I actually know, and she is amazing, and Minnie Chen. They are researchers and experts in the field. And every chapter kind of has a relevant expert. But our goal with this chapter is that is adults interested in elevating youth voice must learn how to listen critically. We heard listening a lot, right, in your description to people who honor youth voice, and be willing to take a step back and share power with young leaders. So we're going to talk more about listening, active listening, and how we can share power. So, because there are no young people here, which maybe is something deficient about this training, right? And if there are no young people here, maybe that will change. But for now, I've included lots of quotations from young people from events that Mentor has hosted where young people were in the spotlight, right, to share their voices and opinions. So we will be reviewing their thoughts on this topic throughout. So, because again, we want to make it sure that we really are honoring youth voice. So I'm going to ask someone to read on the screen. This is from a webinar from a young person, Sesha, that was about youth voice. So if somebody could come off mute and read the text on the screen.
There was a lot of distrust between me and adult figures. I always felt beneath and belittled by authority figures. By having that trusting relationship with my mentors, it taught me to have better relationships with adults later on in life. Now I'm more assertive and more comfortable with adults. Even though there is a certain level of respect I need to give adults, I learned that also demand a certain respect that young people aren't given just because we are younger. Session 18, Maximizing Youth Voice, January 2021.
Yes, thank you so much. I'm wondering, and let me know in the chat, right? Is this reminding you of any young person that you know, this kind of opinion here, or is it reminding you maybe of how you felt as a young person? Let me know in the chat, and we're going to keep pushing. So, what and why, right? What do we mean when we say it, and when we say youth voice, and why is it important? So it can mean a lot of things, from taking a step back, letting youth take charge, to listening to youth interests and stated needs, which we saw a lot in your examples earlier, and to intentionally creating a relationship dynamic that gives youth a sense of agency. So viewing youth as partners allows youth to build confidence in themselves and in their voice, and they become more comfortable in spaces with adults, which gives them a sense of agency. At their core, mentors need to have unconditional positive regard, and we're going to talk a little bit about that later on. If you have heard of unconditional positive regard, drop a 1 in the chat or give me an emoji so I can see where we're all out there. But it is really important to this concept of honoring youth voice. So your role as a mentor that is to be a knowledgeable navigator, and there's actually another whole chapter in Becoming a Better Resource about goal setting and support where it talks about being a navigator or a guide. But this is really makes it clear that a mentor's goal is to affirm, support, and encourage, which again, we saw a lot of those in your examples. Knowing when to lead and when to follow, right? We talked about listening versus talking, and then it goes kind of the same way with leading and following. When to share your point of view or to hear a young person out, and when to open yourself up to a different way of thinking. To be able to do that requires practice and skill, which is why, right, we have a training like this. We want to be sure that we are practicing and building those skills. And then we'll talk a little bit more about, right, what kind of context might we be facing youth and youth voice and how to get through it. Can I have another quote, someone come off you to read this quote from Anaya?
The relationship that my mentor and I have has taught me that collaboration is important and sharing power is even more important. I think it's important that adults and elders and mentors guide us, don't suffocate us, and join us as we are going through this. Support us. Anaya 18, Black Youth Town Hall, June 2020.
Yeah, so any reactions to Anaya? Let me know in the chat. We're going to start getting into talking about sharing power, which I've referenced a few times so far. So the practice of sharing power and how we're going to reference this practice and skill today comes from Search Institute's developmental relationship framework. So Search Institute is an amazing organization that does tons of research in the youth development field about how we can ensure positive youth development outcomes. And they do great, qualitative data and quantitative data talking with youth and practitioners in the field. But they created the developmental relationship framework, which has 5 elements expressed in 20 specific actions that are proven to catalyze young people's lives. And those 5 elements are express care, challenge growth, provide support, expand possibilities, and share power. And obviously, we're going to focus on sharing power today. So sharing power involves specific actions such as showing mutual respect, giving young people a voice in decisions, collaborating in solving problems, and creating leadership opportunities for young people. So I'm going to click through each of those specific actions that relate to sharing power, and then give me an emoji or a note in the chat about, do you feel like you're good at this, right? Is this something you already do or that you try to do in your relationship? So again, sharing power, treat me with respect and give me a say. So now getting into our actions. Let me know in the chat or give me an emoji to let me know if you feel like you're already doing this. Respect me. This is from the voice of the young person, right? Respect me, take me seriously, and treat me fairly. Include me. Involve me in decisions that affect me. Collaborate, work with me to solve problems and reach goals. Let me lead, create opportunities for me to take action and lead. So now that we see these kinds of actions, yes, Jordana and Renee is saying sometimes. There are always room for improvement, Karina. I do this, but better planning on my part would allow me for more sharing of power. Yes, right? That's such a good point. Sometimes it's not even about these actions we're engaging in, but planning and making sure we're ready, and when we're in that scenario with our young person, they make us better at doing it, right? If I make sure that I'm not frazzled before my appointment with my mentee, I'm likely going to be in a better place, that I'm going to be able to do all of these things. I'm not going to be fried or, all over the place. So yeah, that's a good point, Karina. Thank you. So like I said, sharing power is a part of this larger developmental relationship framework. And again, this is the framework. These are the 5 elements. You see sharing power here. And then what we have in the red is what we get from it when we practice sharing power in a relationship. So that young person gains social emotional competencies, their academic outcomes are improved, and there's other what they call thriving indicators. So if you need any more motivation to really share power with young people, I hope this will give it to you. If you are interested in a training on the developmental relationship framework, I think I want to do it anyway, but I would like to know if you guys are interested. I'd love to do one later this year. So if you're interested in really diving into this topic and all of the elements of things like that, please let us know. We're going to send a survey at the end of the training to your email where you can put in that information. But now we're going to get into unconditional positive regard. And I have another quote from a young person. My mentor did a great job breaking down those boundaries. Every time I would greet my mentor, she would greet me with, "Hello, my friend." Just her letting me know that we're in fact friends and that she wasn't just an adult telling me what to do, that meant a lot to me. And this is from Kendall from that Maximizing Youth Voice where we saw earlier. So what we know is when we have unconditional positive regard for someone, nothing they can do could give you a reason to stop seeing them as human and lovable. So the practice of unconditional positive regard comes from psychologist Carl Rogers. And again, it means that no matter what they do, we're still going to see them as our young person and that they are worth caring about and they're worth being in relationship with. It does not mean that we accept everything that they do, right? Young people make mistakes. Young people do things that are not great, that we don't necessarily love. But no matter what we do, that we're going to show up, we're going to be the mentor in the relationship, and that we are going to stand by them and guide them. And when we think about, and again, reflect on a lot of the quotes that the young people have shared, a mentoring relationship may be one of the few places a young person can be their authentic self with an adult. If we think about all of the adults in a young person's life, we have parents who they likely are most exposed to, who have the most control over them, who make most of the decisions for them. We have teachers, of which they are again in a very controlled environment. We heard one of the young people say, being told what to do by adults a lot. Teachers are included in there. And maybe things like coaches and things like that may show up more as a mentor. So there may be an opportunity for young people to be open, to let their guard down, and to really build their identity. And one of the other Becoming a Better Mentor chapters, Practicing Cultural Humility, we talk about how when young people are in relationships with caring adults, they have space to build and develop their identity, because young people are dynamic. We all build our identity over time. So when they are in a relationship with not just a caring adult, but a caring adult who has unconditional positive regard for them, there's more opportunity for that young person to explore, to build their self-perception, and really get to know who they are. So we want them to feel safe and to feel accepted, right, for who they are. Which again, we heard themes of that in a lot of what you said earlier. So this is kind of our through line. Yeah, Jamila, me too. I love unconditional positive regard. So special. Okay, so what we have here is kind of an assessment that is adapted from the Youth Service America's Youth and Adults Working Together, Integrating Youth Voice and Leadership into Programs. So this assessment is for us to consider, how are we doing as it relates to unconditional positive regard, to honoring youth voice and building power, into our topic today. So what I want you to do is if you have pen and paper, get it out. If you want to open a Google Doc and type, we're going to take a few minutes for you to get through these questions and to assess yourself, right? I'm going to give you 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I'll give you 6 minutes, a minute for each question. If you don't get through all the questions, that is fine. But I want you to go through and think about why do I want to be a mentor? Why do I want to work with young people? Do I appreciate and seek to understand their perspective? Do I respect adults and youth equally? Take your time going through each question, and no judgment. You don't necessarily have to share your answers, but we will go into breakout rooms to debrief a little bit. But take this time now to consider these questions, to write through your thoughts, and do a little bit of an assessment. And again, this isn't a personal assessment. This is not for me to judge you or for anyone to judge you, but for us to really face how seriously we take unconditional positive regard and the thoughts and feelings of young people. So I'm going to play some music. It is 6:37. I'll bring you back at 6:43, 44, and take that time to write your answers through this question. I'm going to pause our recording. Thank you so much and welcome back. I would love to hear from a few folks, and also feel free to write in the chat. Yeah, how was it through this assessment? What did you learn about yourself? What did you learn from your group members? Feel free again to just come off mute and share, or write in the chat. What was it like to go through this assessment and break it down together?
Our breakout session, we covered a lot. We spent a little bit of time on why we became a mentor and our backgrounds. And of the 3 of us, it seemed like a lot of us had experience with children and students, but that mentorship really opened us up into the gaps that were there to fill, and the gaps in our own knowledge of actual mentorship versus like being in the parental and like a supervisory role and that kind of thing.
Yeah, such a good point, right? And what I was trying to get to earlier, it is a different role, and there's just different opportunity there as a result. Yeah, no, thank you for sharing, Jamila. Anybody else? Feel free to write in the chat, come off mute. What did you hear from your colleagues? What came up as you were answering the assessment questions?
Something that came up in our group was the importance of mentors who have experienced the program. Um, that was the experience of Brother Thomas from our group. And he just spent some time talking about that and just having that inherent connection to the organization and how meaningful that is. So just wanted to name that as as something that reflects the value of a and success of a mentorship program, but just something we talked about.
Yeah, thank you for sharing, Karina. Right, I've been speaking mostly about mentor to mentor or mentor to mentee kind of aspect of this, but we're going to talk about context a little bit later. If you are a part of a program, if you run a program, you can be a valuable resource in getting your mentors or prospective mentors, right? Mentors you're recruiting to this place where, right, they're coming with the right motivations. They are able to build their respect for young people. They expand their willingness to learn, their willingness to empathize, right? The willingness to see potential in young people rather than, we have a little bit more of a smaller view. And mentoring programs are a great resource to train mentors, to create opportunities for mentors to be in community with each other, to hear stories from each other so they can collaborate and discuss experiences, again, learn from each other, which is really important. So that is for my friends here who are running programs, who have influence over programs. Consider, am I setting up my mentors for success to be able to really practice unconditional positive regard? Thank you. We're going to keep moving forward. We're about 2/3 through for everybody. So, what are some more practices that we can do that help us honor the voice of the young people that we work with or mentor? What are a few things that we can do? Provide our mentees with choices and respect their choices. And again, I heard this a lot in your examples from the beginning. So, giving your mentee options and maybe how you will spend your time together, what activities you will do. And let that also adapt to the developmental age of your mentee, right? How should you be spending your time? What might they be interested in? Younger mentees typically will need options to really make a decision often. So I know I've been in a situation with a young mentee asking them what they want to do, and maybe I've never been asked that question before and taken seriously, right? So they're like, I don't know. And yeah, and giving options can be really useful there when a young person may not, again, have been empowered to really make that kind of decision of how they spend their time, because young people don't get a lot of voice and choice about how they spend their time. Of course, being open to your mentee. So as a mentor, expressing your genuine enthusiasm and openness to learn from your mentee helps break down this power dynamic between adult and youth, right? Mentors can use your resources, your platforms, your networks to connect with your mentee, to elevate their voice and ideas, and encourage your mentee to lead and actualizing and implementing their ideas and goals, right? You can be that connector. That would be expand possibilities under that framework that we were talking about. And when I think about being open to learn from your mentee, when I think about my kind of natural mentor who came to be and existed in my life, was it was my youth pastor at my parish, who we were at a retreat, and I shared my point of view on something in like a sharing circle. And afterwards, he came up to me and he said that he appreciated my contributions. And then he asked me for my help. And I was kind of shocked, right? I was a very disempowered teenager. I did not believe, I felt very controlled by adults and disrespected by adults. And I didn't really believe that young people had the power to do anything. Nevertheless, this adult was asking for my help and for my opinion, and helped me realize my own value. And I did have a valuable voice and I had something to contribute. And that was really, really powerful for me. And to go back to Kindle, what Kindle had said, which we heard from her earlier as well, what means a lot to me is asking a young person's insight on something. It shows that you really care about their perspective and what they care about, and that you're willing to have conversations with them and willing to learn from them. showing them that you're viewing them not only as a young person you're teaching things, but a young person who can teach you things. That's an extremely important and crucial way to really make your mentee feel like they have a say in the relationship, right? It is mutual, it is reciprocal. It's not just about adults, dumping into the vessel, right? It's a cool kind of pedagogical point of view, but rather that it is reciprocal and we're open that our mentee has something to teach us. And the thing is, your mentee likely has something to teach you, whether you're open to it or not. But you're going to miss it if you're not open to it. The young person's not going to try to share it if you're closed off to it. So this act of being open, of being curious, of being inquisitive and making it clear to your young person that you care, they'll be more likely to open up and be reciprocal in that way. Practice proactive listening and actively ask questions and seek insights. So we'll talk a little bit about active listening in just a little bit, but listening proactively, asking questions, learning your mentee's perspective will keep you from assuming what is best for your mentee and telling them what to do. So I heard from you all earlier, right, about the adults who affirmed you were not always making assumptions. They let you tell, right? And by really listening and by asking the question to give you the opportunity to tell them, right? People will tell you who they are if you give them the opportunity to tell you. So that is your opportunity with your mentor-mentee relationship. Hold yourself accountable and your mentee accountable this is supposed to say for next steps? I was supposed to say missteps. Oh, for next steps, yeah. So when you and your mentee have worked together, have discussed an issue or decided on a course of action, right? When you're being that navigator and guide, really have some follow through there, right? So again, proving that you care and are invested. So we're creating a plan together. We're implementing it based on your mentee's point of view and feedback and showing respect to them, that respect for their ideas and things like that. And going beyond just simply validating. So it's one thing to say, I hear you. I agree or something like that, right? It's also that next step of taking action. So for those of us who have ever made a promise to a young person, right? If you don't have that follow through, young people notice. And it's up to us to be accountable to that and to hold our mentee accountable as well when they've agreed to do something or to take an action. And then regularly check in with and encourage feedback from your mentee. So provide opportunities for your mentee to give you feedback on how you can be a better mentor, right? Or on how you should spend your time in a meeting. And that can look like a lot of things, right? And if we're doing this mentor to mentee, you don't want to ever force them to respond, right? We want to give a mentee time to process how they may feel and check in to see how they're thinking. So, and for those of you running mentor programs, when we think about supporting a mentor-mentee match, regular check-ins are a must. If we go back to the element of effective practice for mentoring that I was referring to, regularly checking in with mentors too, but with our mentees about their experience is really, really important. So we can see how it is going. Is this mentor honoring youth voice? Are they, expanding their point of view? Are they practicing unconditional positive regard? Let that young person tell you. Give them the opportunity to tell you. Some pitfalls we want to avoid before we get into our active listening activity. Be prepared to be challenged by youth, right? So we talked a little bit about this at the beginning, this idea of being challenged with new information, and that's how we learn. And for our young people, what I always say, we can have everything in common with a young person, except that they are a young person right now, right? We could have grown up in the same area, gone to the same school, looked the same, had the same background, but they are having this experience now. And what they may tell you about their experiences may be challenging to hear, or maybe something that you don't understand because you don't have the experience. And this is where we give young people the opportunity to tell us, and that we're open to learning something new, to hearing something difficult, and to being open to it. And again, still practicing unconditional positive regard. And those of us with years in the field, I'll say, of course, over the years, I've heard some what felt like crazy things from young people. But instead of passing judgment, instead of making an assumption, giving them space to tell you, right, about who they are and what the situation is and their feelings about it and things like that. Check your biases. I talked about this a little bit earlier, right? When I was just talking about my experiences and the lens that I bring. When we are in relationship with young people, we need to be aware of our biases, which also that assessment kind of helped with as well. But we need to be mindful of what is the lens I'm bringing to the situation? When do I need to slow down and listen, right? And when do I need to learn something new and expand my point of view because I may have an unconscious bias that I'm not really aware of. So being mindful that we are, again, valuing everything about a young person, their voice, their culture, their identity, and that if we feel challenged by it, that we are checking ourselves in this process. And don't patronize. I heard this again in your examples, right? Adults not patronizing you made you feel like not just a kid. Youth can tell if you're patronizing them, right? We want to always be authentic with our young people, and young people can sniff out faux authenticity. If you're trying to be something that you are not, young people know. And you don't want them to find out, right? You want to be open to showing them the real you, and again, that can be mutual and reciprocal. So we're going to transition into active listening, and I have here a little bit about what active listening is, which I'm going to ask for somebody to read, and then we're going to listen to a conversation and kind of point out how was this person practicing active listening. So can I have someone read one of the bullets or all of the bullets?
Active listening involves attentively seeking to understand a speaker's message rather than passively hearing the words that a speaker says. Active listeners provide verbal and nonverbal feedback to show their sincere investment in what the speaker is sharing. Active listening can help to build trust within a conversation, thereby allowing the speaker to communicate more easily, openly, and honestly.
Yes, thank you for helping me out there, Nicole. Yeah, so active listening is steps beyond just listening, right? Listening is one action, active listening is many. It is listening, it is giving your attention, it is seeking to understand, which may require that follow-up and motivational interviewing and asking questions and being curious. Active listeners provide verbal and nonverbal feedback, right? We're talking about all these kind of steps to really do active listening. And what this does is it shows to our young person who we're listening to that we are invested in what they say. And we do this and ask it for people all the time, right? When you ask your partner not to look at their phone while they're talking to you or something like that, right? We're asking for attention. So we can do that verbal and nonverbal communicating so you can gauge this person is invested in what I have to say. And again, what we know is doing active listening helps to build trust. And especially with our young people and early in a relationship, building that trust and rapport is really, really key and something that doesn't just happen once. It happens over time. Build trust, and then we have to maintain trust. So being mindful that this isn't something we do once, but we continue to do it over time. Okay, so we are going to listen to a story. We're going to hear a great example of active listening, basically. And then we'll break down a little bit more on the next slide. But I'm going to first we're going to listen to it, but I'm also going to drop the transcript since it's not a video and there's no captions or anything like that. So I'm dropping the transcript in the chat now, and then I'm going to play it. And after we listen to it, we'll talk through these questions. So give me just a second, and here we go. If you can't hear it, please let me know.
Hi, my name is Aaron. I am attending Corliss High School. I'm just going through a rough time. Basically homeless for 5 months. I had to sleep outside, sometimes with nothing to eat. It's kind of ashamed. I still am ashamed.
It was only after hearing that recording that Aaron's teacher, Celeste Davis Carr, learned that he was living on the streets. They recently sat down face-to-face to talk about Aaron's struggles.
When you shared your StoryCorps recording with everyone, how did you feel, Aaron?
I felt awkward, like a big load was let off. Because, I mean, I just said it. I don't know what made me say it, but I'm like, let me just be honest and just get it out.
I was scared because I felt helpless. I didn't know what to do. But at the same time, I felt I had an obligation to try my best to help you.
Yeah, I didn't even know you actually listened to that one.
I listened to all of them, Aaron.
Yeah, I didn't really think that I would ever tell a teacher, but it makes me know that you're special because you care. Like, you talk to me and you make sure that I'm cool. Because sometimes kids were bullying me, call me a freak of nature, throwing chairs, throwing glass and stuff at me.
I've had to deal with some bullying issues when I was in school, but not to the extent that you have. I was always picked on because I was a tomboy.
You seem pretty cool. I didn't think no one would mess with you.
So overall, how do you feel? You have more friends this year?
Yes, I have more friends this year.
So it's better than last year?
Yeah. I'm in the foster home now. Been since October.
Do you feel different living in a foster home?
It's good, actually. I feel comfortable where I am now. It kind of feels like home.
So can I tell you one thing that I really admire about you, Aaron? Because I've never told you. Do you know that how strong you are?
No.
You never realized that.
No.
But you have a strength that no matter what anyone says about you or they do to you, you don't change who you are as a person. And a lot of people don't have that strength. So I admire that about you.
Thank you.
Don't make me cry again. Okay? I want to see you happy. Just your smile is the best moments of you.
Thank you. That means a lot to me.
So yeah, any reactions, or let's notice again what Celeste was doing. Why do you think it was powerful to Celeste to listen to Aaron and his story? And how does she show that he was really listening to him? Again, come off mute, type in the chat. How did Celeste show that she really heard Aaron's story? Straight back to how he was feeling. She did not give a lot of unsolicited advice.
Baby, Xavier coming here tomorrow. Okay, so this is
Thomas, go ahead.
Celeste showed that she really listened to him by sympathizing with him, by sharing her own personal experience about her, being bullied in her childhood.
Yeah, thank you. Right. She affirmed back a similar experience to be like, I heard you. This is an opportunity for us to connect. Candace, she was asking questions. She was validating, and she mentioned her personal experience, but she didn't focus too much, right? It didn't shift the focus away from him. She asked questions to better understand and gave him positive feedback about his strength, right? Again, when we think about unconditional positive regard, it does mean that we are reflecting back our positive feelings about this young person. It's not just about when we're challenged by them, it's that they are able to see their value and worth, their positive, why they're worth positive regard from you. And that could be from being direct, right? By saying that you are strong and that you can do it. But she related in a different way without overly simplifying. Yes, thank you. Wonderful. Yes, that is a very moving story. Nicole, I see your hand up.
Thank you. I had a question about the point that was brought up about sharing an affirming experience that was shared, but not speaking too much about herself in that moment. And yeah, as someone who's a practitioner and has done this for a long time, Can you help us navigate kind of this wanting to relate, this relatability, but also not making it about the mentor in that moment? And just, yeah, like, is there a way to center it more on the mentee? And what have you found to be an appropriate balance? Or is that even necessary? Is it, okay, I'm not going to speak to my experience and just support someone in their feelings?
Yeah, such a good question, and thank you for asking. So I think a few things, right? I kind of mentioned this already, action of decentering ourselves and decentering in that we're not over relating and things like that. And this comes also from when we talk about empathy and providing support, is that our brains, when they want to connect with others, aim to find similarities. It is easier for us to connect with people when we hear, see, observe things that are similar. So, right, when I hear this story that this young person was bullied, it takes me back to when I was bullied, right? Which is a few things. One, I always say mentors, and part of my language when I used to train mentors, I said, hey, you got to revisit, your shit from being a kid before you get into a relationship with being a kid, because it is going to bring up those memories and the things that you went to. So there's that aspect. And then again, when we see our brains and feel ourselves making those connections, that we kind of practice this active listening, right? We slow down, we listen further, we ask more questions to slow down our assumption that we had the same experience. So making sure, do I really understand this young person's experience before I'm telling them about what I think might be a relevant experience? And you might find out with more information, it's actually not that relatable, right? So being mindful of that and making space for the young person to tell you more, because again, the point of a mentor-mentee relationship is that they are the center of it. Now, another thing that I used to coach mentors about, right, is this idea of war stories, right? The idea that a young person is going through something, and we went through it too, and we're going to tell them this kind of war story. And this is where we have to think about a few things. One, practice that kind of active listening that I just talked about. Two, are you the person to tell this story, to teach this lesson, which is often the goal of something like a war story, right? Which is like a war story being like, I used to skip school and then I failed out and it was really hard to get my GED, blah, 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 blah. Something like that is more like a war story, right? So, right, are you the vessel for you to learn that lesson? Because again, a mentor-mentee relationship with a young person is different than that of a teacher, than that of a parent, and things like that. And it's not to say that we don't hold young people accountable or things like that. But it might not be that your story is as relevant or that you are the vessel to teach that lesson through a story. So I think taking all those things into consideration can help you when you feel a point of a connection and kind of pause us on the overshare as well. We do still also want to have boundaries with young people and not overshare just because we might feel a point of connection. So it is kind of being curious about our assumed points of connections, or when we feel that kind of ping of like, oh, me too, or something like that, that we are more curious and listen further. And then also kind of checking ourselves, am I the person to connect with this young person about it? Is it too personal? Is it developmentally appropriate, right, for our young person and where they are? Is now the time? Taking all those things kind of into consideration before you do too much kind of over relating. Because the other thing is, and I kind of alluded to this earlier, even if we have so many things in common with our young person, our experience is different because they are a teenager now and we were a teenager then. And young people don't often see themselves in adults because they don't have the experience of being an adult, right? It's going to take longer probably for your young person to see their points of connection with you because they're not used to connecting with adults in that way. So being mindful of that as well. And right, again, I think there is a danger to over relating and there's a compulsion to do so, but really slowing down and continuing to be curious about your young person and maybe making that point of connection at a later time where it's more appropriate, where it'd be more fruitful to have that conversation or things like that. I hope that was helpful, Nicole. That was a really, really good question.
No, thank you.
Thank you. Awesome. Okay. We are. Beth, is your hand up? Oh, no, you gave a thumbs up. Love that. So we have about 12 minutes left, and I'm just reviewing what we have left to do. So again, today, also we learned by doing and could use using our interactions now to honestly evaluate and improve. Right. Yes, exactly. So again, we think back to this kind of assessment that we did. Right. Where are we? How can we get better at this? And then when we get into a scenario where we don't execute it perfectly, what do we do to kind of recover from there? So hold on, let me again see. I've over prepared because I like us to have a lot to do now. Okay, we're going to skip our case study today because we don't have quite enough time. So we'll debrief active listening just a little bit more. And again, thinking back to your experience as a young person, thinking back to who was maybe doing a really good job at active listening for you, why is it so powerful to be listened to, but also to listen to others? Why is it sometimes difficult? What can we do to, again, make others feel like we're really listening to them? So feel free to come off mute, answer any of the questions on the screen or write in the chat. Why is active listening so powerful for the person doing it, for the person receiving it? Why is it sometimes difficult?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I think one of the just why is listening to others difficult at sometimes because it could be the mentor may have gone through that same situation or had a family member go through that same situation and they kind of want to just give them the answer instead of letting the youth process what is going on, what is the right next step. They just want to give them the answer so they don't have to maybe have some of those same downfalls as they know either other youth they mentored have or maybe other family members that they have.
Yeah, thank you. Right. If you were here last week, providing emotional support, there's this kind of reflex called the writing reflex, right? We hear a young person talking about something difficult or about a potential mistake, and we want to give them the advice, show them what to do, tell them what to do, which again is often, right, why a young person has been connected with a mentor, period, to get some guidance, to help them navigate. But again, if we jump the gun, if we're listening and then all of a sudden, when someone's listening to you and you can tell that they're already thinking about what they're going to say back to you rather than really listening, right? We want to make sure that we're not doing that because we think we know better, which is really kind of a opportunity for us to reflect on our own biases between adults and young people, right? Am I going to assume because a young person tells me that they're struggling with something that they cannot be a part of the solution for the problem, right? It's not just about, again, the adult giving advice to the young person, but including the young person in that problem solving. That is true sharing power, honoring youth voice. Yeah, Candace talking about, again, all that nonverbal stuff that we can do. And again, I mentioned, right, when someone is, you notice when someone is doing that, putting their answer together. And we get that through that nonverbal feedback that's just a little bit off. So being mindful about that. Thank you. Okay, so like I said, we're going to skip this case study. It is in the chapter. There's actually a few case studies in the chapter. So if you work with mentors, if you are a mentor or part of a program in a larger group, I think it's definitely worth talking through and kind of applying the lessons we learned today and how we can get around those situations because these case studies are very, very realistic. The one we're going to go over is about a young person who's not really open sharing, right? Which is something I hear all the time, right? Like my mentee doesn't share with me. I ask questions and I get yes or no answers. So it's a great case study about Sandy and Marie. But again, there are more in the chapter that I would definitely encourage you to go through to kind of workshop how you may give guidance to a mentor through it. If you are a mentor, how you might get through it. It's really a really valuable resource that's built right into the chapter, which we love. Some contextual considerations. I've talked about this a little bit. You guys talked about it a little bit as well, right? So our mentees' age, pardon me, of course, how you mentor super young people versus older young people will look differently, and it will develop over time. So being mindful, especially I always say when it comes to sharing power, younger people don't have a lot of access to power for decisions because they don't really know a lot about decision making yet, right? I always bring up the example, right? If I'm going to ask my 3-year-old nephew what he wants to eat for dinner, and he says ice cream every time, and I'm like, sure, because I think I'm sharing power and honoring his voice. Well, not necessarily developmentally appropriate for me to ask the 3 or 5-year-old what they want to eat for dinner every day through the week or something like that. So being mindful of when we're giving choices, when we're asking questions, that it makes sense for the developmental age of the young person that we're working with. And again, where you're mentoring. So for those a part of a program, that you have support built into your program, that your program also may have goals and outcomes, right? That you're giving that young person, that you're helping that young person navigate. So thinking about, right, what are the confines, the structure of my program, and how can I do all of this within the context of my program? Where are my opportunities to share power? Because maybe we do have to work on our homework every day. That's just a given. We have to do it. So where are my opportunities to share power with my young person and give them some choice and voice? So being mindful about that. And then for mentors, what we call a natural mentor, right? I mentioned my mentor earlier. I wasn't in a program. This person, this adult, just kind of revealed themselves to me and invested in me. And you may find yourself a natural mentor in your community, right? A young person in your neighborhood stops by a lot to chat, right? Is looking for advice, wants to tell you stories. Or maybe you are a coach, you're a soccer coach or something like that, and you have the young people on your team. You can be that kind of natural mentor. That is a different context. So, right, you might not have a connection with their parents or something, and that might be, again, we think about that appropriateness. It's going to be different within the context of a program versus a natural mentor. So being mindful of what you can do to feel confident in your counsel, right? But also taking a little bit more time for reflection and for getting to know your quote unquote natural mentee, since you don't have the luxury of kind of a program structure to guide your mentoring, things like that. And then lastly, this is within the chapter as well, this idea of the youth adult partnership. So this is the idea of young people and adults coming together for a common purpose. So this is often about problem solving or working through an issue. And right, we're identifying a problem together, we're working together to design solutions, and then we implement those solutions together. There are entire programs that are built around this model. I worked with a program that was, right, young people got to pick an issue in their community, and they all worked together on how they were going to address that issue. So there are lots of kind of considerations there of when a youth adult partnership model might be appropriate for those of us who are running programs, and that might be relevant. In our final minutes, we're going to do one final Slido, which is what we've learned today. In what way can active listening help us honor youth voice and begin to empower our mentees? So putting together all the things we've learned today, how will this help us honor youth voice and empower our mentees? Maybe I'll type. Again, in what way can active listening help us honor youth voice and begin to empower our mentees? Thank you all for your participation today. Can inform the types of programming we develop so that we are actually meeting their current needs. So good, Karina, right? Right. Youth Voices program development, right? Are we doing something in our community that our young people actually need, that they're saying that they need? Really good. Active listening is a foundation for real partnerships. There aren't enough models of humility, so we offer that and we listen with our full attention. So good, Beth, right? And there's another chapter, Making a Mentor, about cultural humility and the idea of being humble about our identities and getting to know our young people's identities. So, yes. Again, real partnerships, and that we talked about the youth adult partnership, right? Being in a real partnership with our young person for them to have our guidance to help them navigate, but to strengthen them to navigate and guide themselves, right, and solve their own problems in their own life. As a mentor, you can guide the youth to make the right choices, and which will play it forward when they speak with the youth. Yes. Answer in the chat. When we're showing active listening, it will cause youth to feel heard, increasing confidence, and increasing confidence will help develop power that they may know others. Yes, exactly. Again, the act of being heard can help young people feel confident because they're being taken seriously. This is, how I grew in my career, right? People were listening. The boss was listening, right? We do this in all of these kinds of areas, but it's particularly powerful for young people because young people just, in the nature of our world, are disenfranchised, right? They have less power than adults. When our mentees feel listened to, they will trust us, and that strengthens our relationship. Yes. Thank you so much for being here. We are at our time. There will be a recording, slides, a transcript. I'll gather your contributions in the Slido, and I'll get that out with you within a week, as well as for those of you who are earning Credly badges, you'll get that out within a week by next Friday, I always say. So you will get all of that in an email from me. Again, I hope this is not our last touch point. I hope to see you again soon at a round table or through technical assistance or something like that. So thank you for being with me this evening. I appreciate those who take on learning in the nighttime, right, in our free time. So thank you for being here. I really appreciate your participation, and I will see you next time.